Good morning, everybody. You're all very welcome to Underground Cinema, and this is our first set of interviews this year for our 13th season this year. So our guest there this morning now is Garret Daly, and Garret goes back with us. We're going 13 years. Garret first came down to Underground Cinema 12 years ago, and the list of films I can remember, Garret was down for Bogman and the Road of Souls. We screened A Nightingale Falling at the film festival, and then the last one then was The Secret Market, and then Gareth sent another one into us then, and it's another documentary called Nothing to Declare. I don't know, Garret, I'm just looking at your shelves back there. You've got so many awards from us over the years, and I'm just looking out for that IFTA as well.
Yeah, no, the IFTA's not there. The IFTA's still in the kitchen. We just keep still looking at it going, whack, that actually happened. It hasn't moved from the kitchen yet.
I get such great satisfaction when we have one of our filmmakers pick up an IFTA or pick up a major award like that. It's fun, absolutely, especially when we've been screening their work from the early days. So we're absolutely delighted for you, Garret. It was fantastic news, and congratulations before we get into the documentary.
Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you. Yeah, well, I mean, the Underground Awards sit there proudly on the shelf as well, because it's a festival we've held close to our hearts over the years as well, and you've supported us and supported our films all the way, so we really appreciate that.
Thanks, Garret. And like when you submitted the film to us, I was delighted because I knew a lot about it when you sent it in through to us. But normally when we get a documentary into us, especially a short, if the running time is around 28 or 29 minutes, we sort of get a little bit concerned about the running time. Or it's not so much the running time; it's about the content. Will they be able to tell the story in that short space of time, because that's a short space of time for a documentary. But I think you nailed it. I remember this story well, because that was my time. I'm 51, so I grew up around the time that Noel and Keith had grown up in. So, and I remember. I remember the story on the news, because at the time it was the Air India flight had hit the south coast of Ireland. The plane had exploded, and I can remember their story at roughly around the same time. But let's start off with can you maybe just give everybody just a quick idea about what this short film is all about, this fantastic documentary?
So yeah, it's a story about Keith Byrne and Noel Murray. In 1985, Keith was 10 and Noel was 13, and they were they were used to kind of going on little trips around Dublin. They'd even go on the ferry a couple of times. They'd travel around Ireland as well, but they had never done anything like what they did in that August of '85. They headed off on the Dart, and they got to Dunleary, and then they got on a ferry and they went all the way to Holyhead. From Holyhead, they took a train to London. They stayed overnight with someone that they met on the train, which is extraordinary when you think of their age. And then the next day they went to Heathrow. I think their plan was that they'd get some food at the food court in Heathrow. They were used to going out to Dublin Airport to get the food from the court, because it was easy to kind of just grab something off a tray and not have anybody notice you. But when they were there, I think the notion came on board that they might try and fly home because they were so far away. They asked this businessman where he was going. He said he was going to New York, and they were big fans of the A-Team. And so they kind of looked at each other and said, well, does BA live there in New York or America? And he said, I don't know, maybe. So they kind of followed him, strangely enough. And then that led them, I mean, they got through security and everything in the airport extraordinarily. And then that led them to the gate of a plane. They tried to get on that a couple of times, and they eventually did. Their technique was they would hold hands and they would say that their parents are coming behind with the tickets. And that got them through all these various different, obviously, security checkpoints and whatnot. And then they found themselves on this plane, which happened to be an Air India, a jumbo, that was bound for JFK. Off they went, never on a plane before. And you have this sort of amazing thing that nobody knows where they are. and now they're en route to New York. They get to New York, you think that's probably the end of the journey because there's no way they're going to get through, passport control or immigration. And a couple of attempts there, and eventually they ducked in under the barrier and got through, and they're in the arrivals hall of JFK. Their trip sort of came to an end at that point because they went up to what they thought was a security officer, and it turned out he was a police officer. And he kind of sort of said, "Where are your parents?" And eventually the game was up. But of course, that just led them to utter confusion because the police officers were just didn't believe them. Nobody believed them that here they were, no money, no passports, nothing, and they had landed in America.
It's incredible. Now, the brilliant thing about this document, not only is it a fantastic documentary, but the stars of this documentary are Keith and Noel, because they are so good at narrating the story and explaining the story, because they're true dubs, and they're able to recount that story so well, and it's some of it is so funny and so unbelievable. But I really enjoyed the interviews with the cops in New York. How incredulous they found the whole thing. That just complete disbelief in how they got themselves to the States. And you and I are great film fans, Gareth, and we've seen scenes where people are being interviewed by the FBI and not like Mindhunter and stuff like that. And there is a great the guys tell a great story where it's starting to get serious. They thought it was all a bit of a laugh, but all of a sudden the heavy guns came into the room and started interrogating them, and that's when they knew this is very, very serious. Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I was keen to do, you talk about Keith and Noel being great storytellers. I mean, I didn't want to get in the way of that. And I made a decision early on that I suppose it was going to be them telling their story, because you speak to anybody who knows a little bit about the adventure that they did, and they'll always say, "Oh, that was the two boys that went off." So I kind of thought I'd love to just put those two boys, as they are, two men now, and have them tell us the story and just share it with us. There was the great radio documentary on RT Radio, and Keith featured in that. But I suppose I had the opportunity here to have the two of them tell the story, and I wanted them to bounce off each other. To have fun together, because I kind of thought if in some ways we could have a glimpse into what they were like and how they might have done it, if we can see them interacting, that would be a good way to do it. And I think we do get to see that. We see the fun, the humor, and the sort of devilment that's still there in both of them.
Yeah, you could they're like two big kids when they're talking, and what's beautiful about it is they're reliving. You can see the eyes are going up to the back of their heads, and they're reliving every moment, and it's a brilliant memory for them. I mean, I think it's Noel can't remember everything. He has to be prompted by Keith or vice versa, but they tell the stories. They tell the story so well. It's hugely entertaining. I'd watch that. It's the type of documentary I'd watch over and over again. And I'd follow my mother's big into documentaries. I'd be telling everybody, you got to watch this. This is just brilliant. If you remember that time, they spell it out so well. What I'm really impressed by, though, Garrett, when you watch a documentary, the amount of work that goes in behind the scenes to put a documentary together. You must have spent an awful lot of time getting some of that footage in the 80s, 1985, to try and get the period right. Ireland Dunleary ceiling. I worked for Stena Line, so I was very impressed that you got that right. How long did it take to get all of that footage together, Gareth? And who helped you?
Nobody did. I mean, it was a very, very small project, and not funded as well. It was a lockdown project in a sense, because we had been progressing with a feature film in relation to the story of fiction telling of it. That sort of came to a halt at the beginning of the pandemic, and I had always had in the back of my mind that I would do a complimentary documentary around it. But lockdown obviously happened. And the longer that went on, the more I began to think about it. And once I decided to do it, when I had the interviews and that sort of side of it done, then began the search, obviously. I think I was a little bit naive at the beginning. I was kind of thinking it'll be easy. Should there's footage to get, be no problem. But of course, the more I delved into the story, and I found that I was looking for aircraft, particular type of aircraft, as you say, particular type of ferry. I mean, passport control and immigration in JFK in the 1980s. It was so specific and so difficult to find some of that material. I literally started, with all the archive libraries initially. That led to quite a good bit of finding. But then I had to basically start people, and that led me to YouTube, and then getting in contact with people like it was plane spotters that had material put up from the era. And once I reached out to them and looked into whether they had anything else, suddenly they were coming back and say, actually, I have footage of JFK from that period. So I ended up licensing all the material from those people. Some didn't get back. It can be hard to contact people when you're just using YouTube, but there was a certain point where I couldn't, through all the archive and news libraries, find the relevant material. And what was fascinating, I think, about the archive search was that sometimes I was looking for material that was going to lend itself to the story. So what someone mightn't have viewed as good archive was almost perfect for me, because I don't know if you've noticed when you watched it, there's a lot of material where it's almost point of view, or the camera's been dropped at a certain point. And I loved that material because it fed into them telling, going through areas. And so the fact it was handheld and a little bit wobbly might have been an offcut for someone's film, but it suddenly became something that I could use perfectly. How long did it take? I mean, months in this room editing it and piecing that together. But actually, relatively, I think it was probably a fast process. I think we started shooting in January, and then it premiered in July. So it was finished late June. So it was there was a long build up to it, obviously, but the actual production period was quick enough. And obviously, in this case, an awful lot of it was just post-production, countless hours. But I really enjoyed it. I found it, it was almost like writing in a way, because I was searching for material, and I found myself getting excited over the smallest thing, where I'd find this piece of footage and I'd be jumping for joy because it just fitted for 3 seconds of the documentary, and that could have been half a day's work trying to find it.
Yeah, there was one thing I noticed last year, and during the pandemic and the year before, and I'm a great one for trying to turn a negative into a positive. So what I noticed with a lot of the films last year and the year before that had been sent into us, that people had been working on during the pandemic, the production values and the edit was much better. So we follow an awful lot of filmmakers, as you know, Garret. So we'd be big fans of yourself and the likes of Paddy Slattery and the likes of that. So especially because we started screening their work at the very start, so we keep an eye on them. So, and we watch them as they progress and as they get better and better. We noticed a lot of filmmakers over the last 2 years are becoming very good in post-production. And I believe that during the pandemic, a lot of people tend to rush their shorts. And let's take Galway, for example. People are rushing their shorts to try and get it ready for Galway. That's the goal. And when you rush your film, you can drop the ball. And I've noticed that people have more time at home or more time to spend in the edit suite, and therefore the production values, the edit itself, was much better. And that's what I was thinking of when I was watching your one there, and I was watching it again today. I was just sort of saying to myself, there's an awful lot of time spent in post-production in this to get it absolutely spot on.
Yeah, and I was kind of inspired by, there was an executive producer that sort of came on board the film from America, who we had been working with, and they had said to me early on that they were a very large LA-based company, and he even said at the time the only thing that they were working on was archive projects, and that was sort of that was a spark for me to go, well, I can totally do this. Because you were, you know, at different times I was thinking about different versions of the documentary, how I would do it. And in a way that just, it opened it up for me, because I could now see it. I could see how I was going to put it together. I could feel the rhythm of it. And I wanted it to be a crowd pleaser. You referred earlier to the sort of fun that it is. I was very aware of where we'd be going to as viewers at festivals, hopefully post-pandemic. That was the notion, that if this was out in the world, I wanted people to sit down, enjoy that half hour, laugh, forget about the time, forget about everything, and hopefully just hit them with this blast of entertainment. And that was my kind of mantra all the way through the edit, that it was, you know, and there's some tough moments in the documentary as well, but overall I wanted the experience to be a really, really enjoyable, heartfelt one for people. And that's, I suppose, what I was aiming for. And I suppose when you've got control of that as much as you can do in post-production, and it's not a part of the process like production that can go astray on you. If you've got the right advice, which I did, if you have the right people to view it and give you guidance, so that, you know, you're not totally on your own, and there's people that you can trust to sort of show cuts to and get advice on, you know, you can, as you say, take that time to make sure that you've crafted the story, because that's essentially what you're doing, that you've crafted the story well, and that it's going to hit the mark that you're hoping to get. You never know until it screens in front of an audience. And the first few screenings were virtual, so I never knew how it made. But I suppose I got a sense of people that had seen it and their reaction to it. And then I couldn't wait to be in a crowd to watch it with people. And then, yeah, the first time it was screened, I was like, okay, yeah, it feels like the beats are right. It feels like it's working. People are laughing, they're smiling, they're crying at certain times as well. But it was just, now it feels right. And I was very happy that I was able to achieve that.
Yeah, another impressive element to the film is the actual cops themselves. You managed to track down the cops, the actual police officer that spotted there was something wrong with two boys. I loved it because the line is classic. I can't remember whether it was Keith or whether it was Noel, but they stopped him and said, "Which way is it into town?" You know, that's like in Dublin. You know, I'm going down the town. That's really well. He was just, you know, this is New York City.
It's unbelievable. And that's actually one of those moments that, if you ask me, would I change any? I love the film. There's not much I would change about it. But having been with audiences, when that line is delivered, the laughter, and then you can't hear anything afterwards. And I'm going, I didn't leave a beat long enough there at all, because you missed the next funny thing that's said. Because you know, particularly Irish audiences are in knots when that goes on scene.
It's just brilliant. It's just a classic. I wrote down loads of lines, but that is the one I thought was great. And there's another great scene where they talk about, like, it's unbelievable, really. It's a fantastic story where they're actually in the police station, and they're asking the cops, they're asking to look at the money. Your money's different from our money back at home, and the cops are then giving the money.
It's brilliant. I know. I know, they're keeping it. They come home. They come home with lots of money in their pocket, because everyone gave them $5, $10, because they kept saying, "What's your money like?" And yeah, it's hilarious that they managed to do that.
They gave I can't remember which one of the guys, but an empty gun.
That's right. Yes, at one point as well. I know, it's just hilarious. They had fun. Like, they were well looked after. The cops were really good to them. I know it got a little bit serious when they were trying to figure out stuff, but essentially they had a lot of fun. They endeared themselves to them, and how could they not? Because once they realized that, you know, I suppose they were, you know, the one thing about it, and I know Kenny and Carl, you know, of the Port Authority cops, do say themselves, they're so delighted that they found them, because it made for a happy ending. You know, it's not like they wandered into Manhattan and something awful happened to them. That they did find them, and that, you know, they had that experience when they came back, and that there was the fun in the precinct. So they were well looked after, and there was kind of fond memories, as you could see, from all sides because of that happening. So it was great that they encountered them when they did.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you managed to tell this story in a documentary like this, Gareth. It's going to be it's well etched in my mind. It's something that I think it'll be playing on the TV. It's coming to TV, yeah. RTE, I've got it now,
Yes,
Gareth. Yeah,
yeah, I'm not sure when, but it should be in the next couple of months. So that's good. I think there's a lot of there's a lot of anticipation in terms of people wanting to see it. We were fortunate. I mean, the New Yorker acquired the film for the US. So New Yorker magazine released it in the US, and that's brought a big audience to it there. That just happened to happen before anything here. But the opportunity was too good to pass up with that type of audience. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Irish audiences beyond festivals seeing it. Because I suppose there's festival audiences, and then there's a new audience, and there's the TV audience. I think will be fascinated in it because RTE had a very successful radio documentary. People of the area know the story as well, and here'll be the opportunity for them to now be introduced to Keith and Noel, and and buckle up for a fun ride.
absolutely, Gareth. Well, look, congratulations again. It's a fantastic piece. I look forward to watching it on the TV again. And it's great that we're able to screen it over the weekend. I'll let you know how it goes down. As I mentioned to you earlier,
Please do.
the online. Yeah, I will. The online viewings are quite high, so I'll keep in touch and let you know how it goes down. Gareth,
Excellent.
thanks a
Thank you,
million for
David.
joining. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.